connections, any coaches that you know on any of those staffs or players or anything that jump out from those 4 teams?
Well, I have some familiarity with our first opponent. Obviously, having been in the SEC for 5 years, know Coach Sully pretty well. Not pretty well, but just know competing against him for years. And then Coach Holliday, I played against him and have known him for a long, long time. So don't know much about Niagara except that they've had a great year and they're very deserving to be there. But so yeah, it's everybody's good, and you got to play great to win, and so we're excited for the challenge.
Did you feel too like Florida's makes the NCAA tournament every year, and did you feel like maybe you guys did gain some experience just this last week playing in big crowds, elimination games that can maybe?
I think it was an amazing experience for our guys. You don't necessarily think about it, but then you hear some of our guys talk at the end of the tournament, and they say, "Well, that was the biggest crowd I've ever played in front of," and it's like, yeah, that's right. That's true. I mean, we had 13,000 people there, and that's certainly a huge crowd, but you don't necessarily put that into perspective until you hear that from the guys. Like, yeah, that was the biggest crowd I've ever played in front of. So from that perspective, it helps. Although most of the crowd was cheering for us, in that ballpark, and hopefully we have some good travel from our fans to go to Stillwater. But just from the standpoint of, in retrospect, the way we won it was probably the best possible scenario for us to win, because we got to stay there so long and play so many games, and you just learn so much about your team with each time you take the field, and having to start so many different pitchers in that tournament and having them all throw so well. They're all taking with them that confidence and that experience, that postseason feel, the butterflies, just all of that they're taking with them this week. And you never know what could happen in a regional. I mean, you could end up having to play on Monday, so that's where that pitching depth definitely comes into play. So and then with the extra games, we had some guys offensively that got really hot, that feel really confident, and we feel really confident as a team. And I'm proud of how we handled those big moments. There weren't any nervous mistakes in there along the way. So happy with how we handled that, obviously, and playing 6 games and in a short amount of time, three games in 24 hours, basically. I mean, that's tough to do, and to win all 3 of them, impressive by our guys. So the way that tournament unfolded, nobody would have ever chosen the first game to go the way that it did, but the response and the amount of games and the amount of experience we got after that was something we'll really be able to capture.
What do you know about how that stadium, that park plays?
It's pretty offensive, from what I've never seen it in person, never been there, seen it in, on TV certainly, and one of my closest friends, Justin Seeley, obviously coached there for a couple of years, and he would send me a few pictures just on, look at this place, this is incredible, but I've never been, but I think it plays pretty offensive. The south wind's going to be blowing out. The wind's always blowing in Oklahoma, and when it's hot, it's blowing from the south, so I would imagine it's going to play pretty offensive. That's what the scores have said in the postseason in that ballpark, is that it's a pretty offensive park. So I know it's one of the top facilities in the country. I'm real excited for our guys to be able to experience it.
After winning the conference tournament, did you have any idea how close you guys came to maybe hosting a regional, and what would you have to do going forward in the next time?
Do I know how close we were to hosting a regional? I think if we would have won the regular season, we would maybe have had a chance. I don't think anything else really was a factor other than that. I think if looking at the other host, if we had won the tournament and the regular season title, I think we've got a pretty good shot of hosting.
You think anything non-conference hurt you at all?
Not at all. No, not even a little bit. Not this year.
Seen the guys turn the page from such the emotional highs of the last 2 days into getting ready for this next week?
Yeah, that's been a trait that this team has shown throughout the entire year, is just the ability to wake up the next day and kind of just move on from whatever happened. And it's incredibly difficult to do. I mean, but part of that is not allowing emotion to drive what you do, and to allow process to be more what drives you. And so if you're emotionally driven, you're insanely worried about your own statistics and how the game went, and all the things you might have done great the day before or terrible the day before, and then you take that with you the next day. You carry that baggage, that emotional baggage that you can carry around. But when you're process driven, you don't think about the emotional side of it as much. So that's something we've really worked hard on as a group, going back to the fall. Just talking about a process and really buying into that in practice. Our process is to practice with joy and intent. Show up every day at practice, have a smile on your face, but do it with great intensity. And then we can go play a certain way on game day when we do that. And then you just turn the page and do it the next day. We've really challenged our guys to not be emotionally driven. It's intentional. So it's not easy to do, but if you do it day after day, it gives you a better chance to do it. And this team's been doing it for almost 10 months now. So it's been impressive. You got to have some maturity. You've got to have guys on the team that are bought into that, and that permeates through the clubhouse. And I always send them a text, or just after each Sunday night, I normally send a text. New week, new opportunities. To go earn what we won, and they've just been very, very driven to stay present and to be really focused on the moment.
How do you practice that though? Because it's only human to have emotions one way or the other.
Well, you practice it by just having drilled through just in practice, and you make that rep the most important rep of your life, in practice, and then you move on to do the next one. This practice, this weight session, this tutor session, this nutrition meeting, just handling all your business the right way. I mean, you just stay focused. I mean, that's really the biggest thing. If you're not focused, then you allow yourself to kind of just your mind to wander and think about things that negatively. I mean, that's the way the human nature, the brain works. So you just have to be intentional about it, and it's not easy. I mean, it's why everybody wants to win championships, and not everybody does. It's hard to do it.
So what are your thoughts about the way your infield's played this year? And even yesterday, Overbeek knocked the ball down with his chest, and then Stokes made a couple of big plays at second too.
We've really improved. I think if you look at the numbers, I think we fielded over 980 in conference, and that's a long way from where we started. I mean, we were not a good defensive team early in the year. A lot of guys acclimating to new positions. Overbeek had not played much third base in his life. Carey's a shortstop, but he had never played at this level, and he really settled in. And Brumball was an outfielder by, what we were looking for him to do last year. Rhett Stokes is playing, Division I second base for the first time, and Tyler Stone at first base, and so a lot of new guys, new faces, and so we've seen them just get better and better through repetition, through experience. I think they've played really well. I think they've really held their own, and not just not making errors, but making really good plays, look routine as well, turning big double plays when we need it, and those guys have worked really, really hard at it, and they've gotten better for sure.
So how much time did you give your guys to celebrate and turn the page?
Well, it was more than 5, and maybe more than 10. I said, let's enjoy it for the rest of the day, and then we turned the page, just like I said, the next day. Monday is always an off day during the season. Now, we earn the off day because we've been at it for so many days in a row now in the tournament. So they'll lift and all that. So we're ready to move on. I think just based on seeing who we're playing gives you some clarity as to what the next mission is.
How do you bottle up what you guys accomplished over the past 5 days or so in Omaha and carry it into the postseason?
You just understanding that you got to go earn it. You got to go earn it every day, and That's the thing that, we're trying to think about pushing buttons with the team and the message and talking. That seems to really resonate with this group is just the rent's due every day. You got to show up and you got to earn it. So, that's the thing. I mean, you got to get the work done in the cages, on the field, with their defensive reps and, their bullpen sessions and how you play catch and just all of it, just trying to stay, like I said, process driven and be able to keep it going.
Maybe it's not a big deal, but did that timeline kind of work out perfectly for Sears to, get in for an inning, get the competitive juices in a game like that instead of like a 9-day break, or does that matter? Or
I think it worked out well. There was only one situation that he was going to throw in that game, and that was it. And it was going to be for 20 pitches, basically. And even if in that inning, if it had been rocky for him and he had a couple of long at-bats and walks and stuff, I mean, we're really going to be careful with not overextending him, because really a lot of times it's not so much the pitch count in totality, it's more how many stressful pitches in an inning. So it was pretty stress-free. It felt good to go through a ninth inning and get 3 up, 3 down and be able to shake hands and then dogpile.
Off the path, but what's his Husker coaching family like? I'm sure you got a lot of feedback from your fellow Husker coaches after the game and how close and tight-knit it's become, maybe.
It's great. The culture here amongst the coaches and just everybody in general is outstanding. And so, I had a lot of the head coaches, assistant coaches for other sports, reach out, and we see each other. I think that's one of the culture created through the training table. Them making that decision to allow everybody to eat there as part of just being a staff member now, and so we're all there. We eat all our meals there during the week, and we see each other and sit with each other and talk shop, and just so it's been great.
To ask you this yesterday, but what did it mean to you personally to have Greg Sharp be able to be there?
That was emotional. After the game, he came down and he had some tears, and I did as well. And I've come to grow pretty close with Greg for the last few years, and he's fighting a fight that it's a battle. It's tough, and it's taken a toll on him, and I'm sure his family. But when we found out and told the team about it, we said, well, let's dedicate the rest of the season to Sharpie, and that's when we decided to get the patches on the hat and honor him with the jersey and those type of things. And I was thrilled that he was able to be there and call the game. That was a pretty special moment for him personally, and it was great to see him after the game, and hopefully he can be with us in the postseason. I know it's just going to be up to his treatments and those type of things, but his voice still sounds great.
Have you gone back and listened to the final out?
I haven't. I really need to though. I've watched the dog pile a few times. I'm glad Brett Sears came out of it okay, but. I told him that's why you got to end up on top. I've never allowed myself to be at the bottom of the dog pile, but it's kind of tough when you're the pitcher. No, I haven't. I'll have to go listen to his call on that.
Is the pitching pretty straightforward in terms of who your first two guys would be this weekend, or do you guys look at that a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, I would think so. We haven't talked about it necessarily, but Brett will be ready to go game one.
When it comes to the third guy, if you're choosing between a Brockett and a Walsh, is it just a matter of how do you think Walsh's pitching package, matches up against whoever your opponent is compared to Brockett's, or is that where you would go?
Probably, yeah. I mean, you've got Christo in the mix now too, but he's been such a valuable piece out of the pen. It's hard to imagine, short of some continued great starting pitching where guys are going 8 or 9 innings, that you don't use Drew in one of the first 2 games out of the pen. So all those guys would potentially be in the mix for a game 3 and in a tournament setting. It's matchup based too, potentially, like you said, who you play and who you think might match up with the opponent.
Last time we were in this room, I think I asked something about who would be in the weekend rotation for the first week of the year, and you said there were like 20 guys.
Yeah.
How is the depth played out from a pitching perspective this year? Has it played out like you thought it would, and just from the team as a whole?
I would say we haven't had the staff necessarily firing on all cylinders like we are right now. But I think it's taken some bumps in the road to get us to this point. I mean, it took Brockett getting off the roster for him to get to where he's at now. I mean, there's just no question about it. He had to get to a rock bottom moment before he was going to flip the switch to be able to get to where he's at now. Just much like Brett Sears, same thing happened to him last year. I think we talked about that early in the season. He didn't travel, and he had to make a decision from that point forward what he needed to do. So. We haven't necessarily had the depth show up throughout the year. We haven't had a solid Sunday guy, for most of the year. And we've kind of had different guys starting on Tuesdays. So, we've just had certain guys, been mainstays, the first two for the most part. But now that, Caleb Clark and Jalen Worthley and Brockett and Walsh and, Christo, all these guys are throwing really well right now. So that depth is really starting to show that we knew we had going into the season, and it just necessarily, it showed up at the right time, I guess. No better time than right now to be feeling great about it.
Sure. I know it's been 2 years, but will you talk to Caden Brumbaugh maybe about some intel or just his experience at Oklahoma State?
Yeah, he'll have some intel for us, I'm sure. But we got to, the more the intel we're going to get from him right now is just about how the ballpark plays and that type of stuff. Because obviously he didn't go to Florida; he went to Oklahoma State. So we'll cross that bridge if we get there.
Well, were you bothered by the fact that Josh Caron wasn't all Big Ten? It seems like a lot of your fans weren't too happy.
I thought it was pretty ridiculous that he wasn't at least named somewhere in there, right? I mean, they've got 3 teams, and now that's not to take anything away from the catchers, because the 3 catchers that were honored were incredible. Their stats pop off the page, all 3 of them. But then you've got the utility, the DH. There's a way to slide guys in all conference teams that are deserving, and certainly the coaches are aware of his presence. In fact, before the tournament started, Coach Mercer, I sat next to him in the coaches meeting when we first got to Omaha, and he's like, "Man, Caron, that guy's a dude, isn't he?" I'm like, "Yeah." And 6 home runs later, he's kind of taken on a totally different persona. But yeah, it was. I said something to Josh. I said, "Hey, man, I'm sorry that your name wasn't honored at all. I think it's a travesty, basically, that you weren't honored by the league in some way, shape, or form." And he goes, "I'll have a little more of a chip on my shoulder for that this week." He goes, and he says it with the most sincerity imaginable. He's like, "You know what? I'm not in it for personal accolades. I want to win." He's like, I want to win this tournament. I want to win in the postseason." He goes, "That's far more important to me than personal accolades." And I was like, "Yeah, that's why you are who you are." And when you have that mindset, typically you get paid back.
Well, I asked the players, and we've talked about it too, but the team pictures.
Yeah.
That was your idea? Is that right?
It was. And I'm not the first to ever do it. I mean, there's been others. I think I got it from Jay Johnson. I think they did it at Arizona a couple of years ago. I guess it was several years now when that team went to Omaha. But I had noticed that their team had taken a picture, and I was like, that's a pretty good idea. And it never really came back to mind until last year when KP and those guys were taking the pictures in the dugout, which I thought was fun. But this is much more team oriented, than that. And so, I think it chronicles, like these guys were saying, that feeling you're chasing. It's not the win, it's the feeling, right? It's what the feeling that you get when you get to slap hands and you get to, have the talk after the game and get fired up. And, I've put Will Walsh in charge of putting the pictures up, because he's one of the taller guys, and in our locker room, I had him go 10 across. I said, we're going to get to 40 wins, which we didn't quite get there at the end of, but we're at 39, I guess. And so 10 across and 4 down is kind of the way that he put him up there, and I couldn't reach it, so I had Will do it. So it's been fun. I look forward to badgering Jared Meister every Monday to make sure he's gotten the pictures printed out for us, and that he can bring them over to us so we don't have to come get them from him. But yeah, it's been fun, and they're all nice quality pictures, and it's something that I've enjoyed seeing every day in the locker room.
Is it the same person who takes the photo?
No, we've had a lot of the different social media that travel with us. They've taken pictures on the road, and then at home it's varies as to who takes the pictures.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.